This is season number 19 of Bass Talk Live with Matt Pengrack. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Aftco, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Pro Guide Batteries, Beatdown Outdoors, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, and Omnia Fishing. Hit him with the hook, Jeffries.
PTL coming at you.
Good evening and welcome to a very special edition. It is PTL at night. Had Luke Palmer on today as he traveled 8 days away from the Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville, Tennessee, on the river. Potentially the lake. We don't know how that's going to get won, depending on some of the weather systems that are going through that area. But tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have Ben Milliken on, who is fishing all 9 of the Bassmaster Open EQs, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. And it worked out pretty good in the first Derby. Ben, thanks for jumping on BTL. I know you're a busy guy. I know you're traveling around the country. Thank you for taking time to jump on BTL tonight.
Anytime, Matt. What's going on? How we doing tonight?
I'm good. So here's what I was thinking. And like I said, I got the new studio in the house. And this is basically, I kind of want this to go like a phone call that I would have had with you, to where, dang, Milliken finishes 5th in the Bassmaster Central Open on Lake Eufaula in Alabama about a week and a half ago. Caught him right out of the gates. And then you see the little deals on social media where you're like, hey, watch me catch 15 pounds in 6 casts. And you're like, geez, that's crazy. So instead of just calling and talking to you on the phone how it went down, I was like, dude, let's do a freaking live over this thing. Let's jump on live. Let's break it down. Let's talk about how things went down on Lake Eufaula. So thank you for taking the time to jump on and talk about it.
Heck yeah, man. It was a super fun event. Great lake. Never had been there before. And I definitely want to go back. I love that place.
Can we talk about what's going on in the industry before we get into the Bassmaster Open?
Oh, I suppose so. Let's do it.
All right. First of all, NPFL kicked off on Pickwick today. I think 24 pounds is leading it. But the dreaded lock situation came up and bit 11 of the 75 anglers, which is, that's more than 10%, because if 10 out of 100 would have been 10%, that's like 7, 6, 15, 16%. They locked down into Wilson, I believe. They shut the lockdown, and like 3 or 4 guys would have been in the top 10. Goose eggs.
Oof, that's rough. So we don't have any lock situations until the Harris chain. Is that correct?
Harris chain, because, but do you want to consider Florida locks? I mean,
I know nothing of Florida locks other than they sucked for the tournaments this spring, because I know nothing. I've never even fished in Florida.
Yeah, so they sucked as far as people clogging them up because they're very small. They're like they're like baby locks. Like I was kind of the same way in Florida. I went through a couple just to make sure a couple years ago, and I went down, but they're like 6 or 7 boat locks. Like the lock master just like walks out and he's like, everyone in, all right, and then it's tiny, it's very small. That's the problem. Like when you're going down into a Popka or going into any of the lakes that you've got 30 boats, there are 50 boats that want to get through, and it takes 15 minutes each way. It's a timing deal. But, you're talking on TVAs or like on the Arkansas River where you can fit 20, 30, up to 100 boats into a lock. That's where the issues come. And then you have to deal with barge traffic. You don't have any barge traffic in Florida.
Correct. Yeah, that was that sucks, man. That's a big thing. I think we always worry about that in these tournaments, but it doesn't usually be an issue unless there's a barge or something that comes through. But I fished a couple tournaments in the Mississippi River where that went into strategy, never had any issues with it, but man, that's rough.
So that went down, which is interesting. So that's like, the NPFL kicked off the first year. Then they had to cancel the first day of last year on Cumberland because of the weather and the lake. Literally, they got all the boats in, and the lake came up 3 feet between the time the boats were in and takeoff. Then this year, a good portion of the field gets stuck in the lock. But hey, still following that, still looking at $100,000 for 75 boats. Did you look into fishing that at all, Ben? Like, was that at all on your radar?
So back unfortunately, like they kind of talked about, they've had a hard time getting the schedule out in time the last few years. Not in time, but more timely, because I have considered the NPFL since it was the inaugural season. But yeah, when I had to kind of put my chips in and figure out what I was going to do and start figuring out how I was going to be able to get into the Opens, or my best chance to get in the Opens, they didn't have their schedule out yet. So, yeah, and at that point, I mean, you kind of figure that you're not going to be able to do both. So I went the Bassmaster Open. I still would. Obviously, the Elite Series is the top level in the sport, or along with MLF, but the Bass Pro Tour. But NPFL stepping up this year to $100,000 is very impressive for that small of a field.
Absolutely. I saw John Cox John Cox from Florida. There was a John Cox. I think, is he still fishing it this year too? The other John Cox, there might be two John Cox in the field this year, but he only had a couple fish today. But that dude, he reminds me of you as far as he just loves to fish. Like, doesn't matter what, he'll fish anywhere, anyway, and you can tell that he's genuinely enjoying catching whatever the hell is on the end of his line.
Of course, yep.
All right. This afternoon, Bass Communications came out with a press release dated March 15th. Bassmaster panel upholds Smith's Eufaula disqualification. We're talking about the 7th place finisher in the Bassmaster Open on Lake Eufaula, and that would be none other than the $1 million man, Tucker Smith. If you want to look at Tucker Smith's list of accomplishments, shocking. Like, I think he's like 3-time high school world champion, all the stuff he's won at college, jumps into the Opens this year, finishes 7th in it. And I haven't mentioned this. I know Luke Duncan talked a little bit about it on his podcast earlier this week. I have not mentioned this on BTL because I do not like to talk about anything until I have cold, hard facts. Yes, the phone has been ringing off the hook. Yeah, yes, I've watched the videos. I'm assuming, and I feel like I'm part of it, and that it's important for me to keep up with it because I was in that tournament. I paid my $1,800. I abided by the same set of rules. We signed everything. We sat through a 2.5-hour meeting where Hank Weldon went through all the different rules. We agreed to all that stuff. You on the same page with me here, Ben?
For sure.
But there was some rumblings that Tucker had been protested by a fellow angler about some potential like hole sitting things or anything. So anyway, long story short, very brief press release comes out. Bass Communications, BASS officials announced today that after an extensive investigation and appeals process, which is interesting. I paused there because didn't Hank go through a massive deal about protests, when it had to be done, the appeals process, who was on the appeals process, how it was all done? I thought it was really well laid out in the meeting.
Absolutely. Everything was really, I was very impressed by that. And really the way the entire Open was run there in that first one.
You fished a lot of tournaments before, but nothing you fished the US Open, yep. The Johnny Morris US Open for the $1 million. But as far as a rules meeting like that in the room with that level, had you ever been a part of anything like that before in your career?
I fished a couple national championship tournaments, but nothing like that. No.
It's scary when they start going through the rules, isn't it? I don't care how many times you've been through them or what you know. You're just like, holy cow, this is legit.
Yep, it's happening. And yeah, I mean, it's just like all the stuff you watch on TV and you hear about, like, this is me now. This could happen to me. And yeah, man, the biggest thing that paranoid me, honestly, that I was trying to be super careful about, and we'll kind of get into my catching fish on the spot and culling and stuff, is it made me nervous because I didn't remember if you could, because you have to, there's the 6 fish penalty, of course, is what I'm referring to. So he made it clear, Hank did in the meeting, that if you could continue the culling process with 6 fish in the boat, but once you break the process of culling, not just making a cast and fishing, but anything that breaks the process of culling, then you get the penalty.
Sitting down, eating a sandwich, doing something that's not related to culling.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the situation. What if I catch fish number 6, and I did with a co-angler in the boat, and boom, reach down, grab it, whatever, got it in there. Okay, I'm going to need to cull. And then I'm like looking back, yeah, I need to cull. And then I run to the front of the boat and spot lock, and then I come back and cull. Is that...
That's you're 100% in the process of culling. You're working on safe boating. You're securing your vessel. and you're continuing the cull. You're not making an attempt to cast. You don't have a line in the water. You're not doing anything. All you're doing is culling.
Yep.
That's where I said, like, I get this too. I'm a nervous individual, Ben.
Me too. I know.
And I get into this thing where I'm like, am I breaking? Am I not breaking? Like, I've called either Hank or Chris probably 6 times out of the last 20 opens during the tournament or during practice about either a buoy, a marina, a no wake zone, something that I just didn't understand. And 5 out of the 6 times they laughed at me and were like, dude, you're good. Just, do it.
Right.
And one of the times they were like, ooh, that's an interesting area. Let me look into it. So, I mean, that's the easy way to
it's good
do it is to call.
And it is. Yeah. It's just interesting. I was just paranoid. My first
No,
one.
dude, I'm the same way.
Because you would be fine, but I have a camera on me in a camera boat, and I'm putting a video out. So
do I. I mean, I run a GoPro, but not to your level.
Well, I just mean, like, I've already had people trying to start rumors about me cheating before to major business partners and sponsors, calling them about me cheating in this tournament. Just
because you had a cameraman in the boat because you didn't have a co-angler.
No, just creating stories to get me disqualified.
Really?
Yeah. It's been fun. I apparently I got a phone call from one of my business partners, I'm not going to say who, that I'm very close with. And I apparently there were several anglers in the top 10 that were trying to get me disqualified because they had proof that I was at a gas station and there was a local that got into my boat and was giving me waypoints and putting them in my unit. So, yeah, I had to field that concern about a person that was just positive that this had happened. I was like, I didn't even have anybody in my boat. I just said, I hope I can find that local before Toledo Bend or that gas station, because that sounds like a great deal. Apparently, there was a magical spot I could have had that would have made me beat these 15 Elite Series guys that are phenomenal fishermen from that magical spot. If you watch
your videos, which we're actually going to get into, we're going to break it down. I've got some technique stuff that I want to pick your brain about. You kind of went through on how you found some of the spots, and actually, I mean, you gave up an uncomfortable amount of information for someone who wants to do this at a serious level for years to come, Ben.
For sure.
I mean, you gave up like spots on Eufaula, like you're showing stuff on the map, and I'm like, oh, I know. I know exactly where that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I kind of look at it like, and I understand this from fishing all over the country and from fishing some of the most pressured lakes in the country. They're not going to be there next time, whether I show the spot or not. And if they are, then they're going to get beat to shit anyway. And because everybody finds out by June, July, August, September, where everyone's been fishing, and then that school gets pushed off and moves anyway. And I don't care if we go back there next year, then I'll find them somewhere else.
We got a lot of live viewers here, and just in case you don't have an actual understanding of how the Open rules work, there's a 28 to 30 day off limits period for each Open that's coming up, and that is an on the water off limits. What that is an attempt to do was Bass, Hank, those guys, in response to a lot of the anglers saying, hey, you've got guys that are fishing 20, 30 days in a row leading up to the Open. Can we just make it a standardized practice so you don't always feel like you're behind, and then you get to the Elite Series and you get 2.5 days to figure it out and you get trounced because you've been spending literally 10 times as much on each fishery. So they made it 28 to 30 days where the lake is off limits just to fish. Then you get a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and half Wednesday practice period. Now the information, whereas let's say I got a buddy on the lake, I call up and I say, hey, what are some of what have they been doing on the lake? I can get information up until that Saturday of practice. So even though the lake is off limits for 28 days, there's really, I'd say, a 5-day no information off limits. But until then, you can get information from buddies, pals, friends, strangers, Instagram DMs, but it's like that for the entire field.
Right.
And it's been actually shorter before because it just was Monday before this. So it's actually 2 days longer than it has been. So when we talk about information, getting things like that, that's kind of where it is. It's kind of a weird no man's land. I've never seen a lake off limits for 30 days, but then a 5-day no info. But dude,
it's different for sure. I kind of wish it was no info for the 30 days before. Make it a little bit more standardized, I guess. But regardless, I'm so happy they changed all the rules. They truly did make it much more applicable to an angler that would be more successful in the Elite Series than how it previously was laid out.
Oh yeah, 100%. And there's 173 of us that are fishing all 9 of these things. Yep. So anyway, let's get back to what I started with the Tucker Smith thing. So after an extensive investigation and appeals process, Tucker Smith's day two catch disqualification from the St. Croix Bassmaster Open at Lake Eufaula has been upheld. Smith finished in 7th place. The disqualification was handed down based on a violation of the Angler Code of Conduct, Section 7 of the Bassmaster Open Series rules, which lists among the examples of unacceptable behavior by competitors in BASS events, quote, interfering with a fellow angler's ability to compete. Smith's appeal was heard today by a 3-person panel, which included an Elite Series angler and a Bassmaster Open angler, neither of whom competed in the 2023 Eufaula Open, and a Bass employee who was not part of the tournament department. So, listen, you can talk all you want to about rumors and hearsay and what went on. That's the official statement right there. So I would assume that would mean that Tucker Smith's day 2 weight is DQ'd. He still maintains what he had for his day 1. He was not fishing the over. He wasn't fishing all 9 of them. So he still gets the points for whatever that division is, for what it's worth. And then Miles Berghoff, who we just had on, we just gave him a hard time about finishing 41st. He's going to get a little present in the mail next week, which is going to be a $3,400 check for 40th place. He did text me. He was rather happy about that today.
That's fantastic.
Was there a lot of stuff that went down on the ledges in this Derby, Ben, that I missed? Because I missed that bite entirely, but I heard, like you said in one of your videos, let's see if we can get this thing started before the crew gets here, before everyone else gets here. Was it a dogfight out there?
Well, yeah, it kind of was, because there wasn't a lot to go around for everybody, because it wasn't even really a ledge bite. It was more of like and we'll kind of get into this as we kind of nerd out a little bit later, like we talked about.
Yeah.
The fish weren't set up on their summertime ledges, which would be enough for probably 50 to 75 boats to fish. They were on the creek channels leading into these spawning pockets, which was, not a lot of schools. And it's the funny thing is that spot that all went down on was my 1A spot that I didn't go to. And that was a spot where Justin Barnes, who I kind of became friends with and talked to at this tournament, it's where he caught his 25-pound limit the day before, and where I went after Tucker left that last day, and I upgraded 3 times. So none of that went down while I was there, but that was a group of fish I was very familiar with, and a spot I was very familiar with.
Did you see anyone hanging out there?
No, I can tell you this, there was nobody there so day 1 of the tournament, I'll just tell you how it went. I was talking to Justin. We had a mutual friend. He stayed 2 houses down. The guy that was my camera boat driver, he hit me up and wanted to be my camera boat driver a long time ago, back when I announced I was fishing opens. So I asked him, I was like, do you have a place that, I could stay? He said, yeah, absolutely. My buddy Todd has a place 2 houses down. Well, another 2 houses down from that, Justin Barnes stayed for the Derby as well, and another one of his friends' places. Justin's a local. He knows David, the camera boat driver, and everything. So they had us over for dinner the night before was it before? No, it was after day 1 of the tournament. So I had met Justin. I had talked to him at the meeting and stuff and introduced me to him. So we're standing around. He's boat number 16. I'm boat number 12 before we're going to launch. And we started talking and talked about kind of what we were doing. And like, oh man, we're kind of doing the same offshore cranking thing. And he's like, there's not a lot to go around. A lot of those schools have left. And I was like, yes, they have. But I know of a couple that are still good. I'm going way down the lake. Are you going down the lake? Yeah, I'm going down the lake. Okay. He's like, well, how deep are you catching them? I was like, well, one group's in, 16, 18 feet. Another group's in 20, 22 feet. He said, okay, how many fish are in the school? I was like, 50 to 70 probably. And he said, I think we're going to the same place. And I was like, I don't know the name of the creek or anything. I showed him on my map. He's like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, are you going right or left? And he was like, I'm going right. I was like, cool, I'm going left. So I went to the school on the east side of the lake. He went to the school on the west side of the lake. But he had it to himself for a long period of time the first day. And then the second day it flipped. And And then, of course, I probably should have gone to the right, it sounds like, and caught 25 pounds instead of 18, but that's kind of how it goes. But anyways, second day comes around. We both get it flipped. We were in the 200 and some boat number. And he told me straight up, I'm not even going to that spot again. I had 6 or 7 boats try to come in on me the first day and fished with another guy most of the day. People are going to fish it. There's going to be a local tournament. I'm sure people fish from that. I was like, cool, whatever. I might go check it out then. He's like, cool, have at it. So I ran there actually first just to see. And there was 2 boats already on it, Tucker Smith and another guy. I think it was the guy that was fishing with Justin later on in the day when I had gone to check it out before. So I didn't even stop. I just wheeled around, went over to my spot, and that's kind of how that went. And I had an incident that went much smoother with Gary Klaus over on my spot that I started on day 1 on day 2. And then later in the day, I actually went back to that spot. And I've talked to Tucker Smith. I fished that U.S. Open tournament. Him and his partner, Logan, told me they were fans of the channel. And he finished in the
top 10.
Correct. Told me they were fans of the channel. Seemed like really cool dudes. They are cool dudes with me anyways. Like this is a shitty situation. Not standing by anything he did or anything like that. But, and I've kind of kept in touch. We send whatever messages once in a while on Instagram, but so we've kept in touch. And so I rolled over there at like 2 o'clock or 1:30 on the second day, and it was just Tucker there by himself. And I pulled up and I said, yo, can I hop in here and fish next to you? Where are you fishing? He said, no problem at all. I'm fishing this stretch right here. So feel free to take over there if you want to a little bit. I was like, cool. But I hopped in and kind of saw that in like a couple minutes, I could tell he was sitting on them good, and I wasn't going to be able to make a good cast on him. I was like, dude, I'm getting out of here. I'm not going to come in on you and cast over your line and stuff. And I was like, what time do you have to go in? He said 3 o'clock. And I was like, cool, I'm fishing till 5:20. So I was like, cool, man. So I rolled in there at like 3:45, and I actually upgraded 3 times on that spot with a different bait than everyone was throwing on it. And that's how that went for me. That was it. He was the only boat there. First day, or on that time, the end of the tournament, and then the start of the second day, it was him and another guy. But that dude was not there or anything. So I didn't witness any of that.
You never
go down,
saw any of the.
I did know where it went down. Yes.
Yeah. For those of you who are lost, I can sum this up in 15 seconds. There's an egger that claimed that another individual who was not in the tournament was hole sitting for Tucker Smith and then harassing anglers who were fishing in the vicinity of Tucker Smith, which is illegal in Bassmaster rules per the Bassmaster press release. That's as cut and dry facts as you can state. Fair assessment there, Ben?
Very fair.
If you want to peruse Facebook with keywords, like I said, Luke Duncan laid it out. That's never been my style. Never will be my style on it. When there's facts, when we can talk about something, that's what I want to talk about. Nothing against that. It's fun to talk about. And yeah, we'll text and talk about it. But to put it out in the forum, like, dude, I want to make sure that I do justice to Tucker Smith, that I do justice to the other individual involved, to the guy who was claiming what was involved, to the process, and to Bassmaster. That's all it comes down to for me. And haven't been in the industry for 15 plus years. It's worked for that long. I ain't changing it now.
Very fair. I'd say the large majority of people watching this have either seen it or very simple to find it. So,
yeah. I want to dive into some videos here because I was a little bit shook. I'm not going to lie, Ben, when I talked to you in practice, and we didn't talk, but we just checked in. You're like, oh, you on him? And I'm like, hell no. I said, are you? And there's one thing that sends fear through the hearts of competitors when you're fishing against someone else is when you ask if they're on them, and without an unequivocal hesitation, you say, yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm freaking smashing them. And that's what you did. Like you were on them. Like it seemed to be like, I think I talked to you after the second day of practice and you were already looking for like B stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there wasn't, like I was saying, I mean, the obvious stuff that I was scanning was not the main river channel, but the main creek channels and the main spawning creeks. And I mean, you could literally spawn. You could scan every single one of them in one day, as opposed to Toledo Bend coming up, where I think you could scan every one of them your entire lifetime and not cover all of them.
It was shocking to me, and I was actually just using the C map that was in my Lowrance graph, and you could set the depths. I mean, it was just creek channels off of the main ledge that led into prime spawning habitat. And you could see the cattails in the back, or the creeks, or the shell. You go back in there, it'd be like 3 or 4 foot, and then you could see the ledges on the side. And it was, I mean, it was like those fish were ready to pop. Would you agree?
Agreed. Absolutely. That was definitely that was my biggest fear in the tournament. Once I found that stuff, that they could slide up at any moment. But at the same time, a lake that big, there's always going to be some that are waiting, especially because the moon was coming in the Tuesday after the tournament. So we were still 6 days ahead of the moon. I thought we'd still be good, and they did hold up, obviously, for a lot of people.
All right, let's see if this works. Let's add this to the stream. So this is a portion out of your practice video that I think you ran it last week?
Yep.
On your Milliken fishing channel. But this is really cool stuff. We don't have any audio here, but here you are going through, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can clearly see the creek channel there. So is this the C map that you were running?
Yeah, this is the Lowrance C map. I have a Humminbird on the right with Lake Master, and C map there on Lowrance on the left.
Okay. But dude, this pops out like a sore thumb. And I mean, I actually was very familiar with some of the areas that you're talking about here. And go back and watch this afterwards. But let me see if I can pull this up to see where you were talking about, like right there, right?
No, I don't know anything about that area. I don't know what you're talking about.
But look at
yeah, no, for sure. But look at the shading there. That's
what I'm talking about, dude.
Perfectly with how I had the different depths shaded. So as you can kind of see there, it's kind of vague, and for people listening to this, it's not going to make much sense. But out there in the green, I kind of figured out, and I adjusted how I had my map shaded. The green was deeper than they wanted to be, all that green out there. So even though it was on the edge of the creek channel and of the main river channel, just a little bit deeper at this particular lake than they want it to be. Obviously bass can set up in 25 plus feet of water all over the country, but on the way into these spawning grounds, they were looking for one of the first areas that they felt comfortable where they could come up on the side, the top side of that creek channel ledge, not your traditional current summer ledge on the main river channel, bars, etc., but the actual creek channel where it led in. And so I'd scan down one side, then I'd come back and scan the other side. If I saw anything interesting, I'd stop and go back several times.
So if you can see the mouse here, if it's your boat, you're starting out here and you're going all down this very defined creek channel, side imaging this and down imaging it and marking. What are you looking for on your side imaging that makes you want to turn back around and make some casts there?
I'm straight up looking for fish. A lot of people have asked me that because I kept saying, hard spots. I was catching them on hard spots. Yes, they were hard spots, and that's probably why the fish were there. But the sides of these creek channels, I mean, I don't know how old Eufaula is, but it's been around
a minute.
Yeah, exactly. The sides of all the ledges in the creek channels are going to be hard in several places. But I was looking for fish, and then I'd whip back around, and generally it would be a hard spot. But you can kind of see these little stop sign icons there, hearts or whatever that is. That's a main river channel that just came in there kind of from the north, so that you can kind of see where it turns right there. It makes that dog leg. It was the first place that those fish were able to just really stop and set up and slide up on that river ledge. And it probably did help some, even though I didn't see an effect of the current in this tournament when they were pulling water. Probably helped that there was, the current runs north to south on this lake. So it probably flushed bait fish right to that south side of that ledge, right in their mouths. That's
beautiful. So the key, and let me just see if I get this right, to me, which I didn't fish this spot. I fished this spot, not in the tournament. I did not find the fish that you found there. I was doing something different, unfortunately. For me.
What were you looking for? Brush piles?
I was looking specifically to target brush piles and to scope them.
Got it.
I wasn't looking for schools. I was looking for individual fish. So I was more going down the middle of it and targeting ones and twos and not looking up on the ledge where it actually came up into the shallower water.
Yep.
The key to this spot, though, where these fish would sit is this stuff right back here that I'm circling, and this stuff right back here, like where your fingers are pinching, right? Because that's, in my opinion, where those fish had to be headed. It's like you have to understand the system. This spot isn't just good because it's a ledge, but it's good because of what's 500 yards away from it.
You got it. More than that, even. I mean, it doesn't look big on the map there, but probably from the back of that creek where my fingers are out to that main, where I got those waypoints there, that's probably 2.5 miles right there.
Yeah. But those fish are moving back there to spawn.
100%. So it's a huge spawning area, every one of these major creeks.
And let me see if I can get to another part, because there's also a key on here. Oh, we're going to hit the ads. I need to pay the
come on.
I need to pay the, what is it, $11 a month to go ad free or whatever.
Oh, dude, I still have to watch ads on my own videos. I'm too cheap to hop on and do it too.
But I want to see, so when you catch these fish out there, you notice something in your video right off the bat, and you're pumped about this. And that is this region of the fish right here. Its color, and let me see if I can get to one, but its tail. Those suckers were pre-spawn.
100%. And one thing I kind of read and heard from all the online study I did up to the tournament was that's different in a lot of different fisheries, depending on what the system is pouring into the lake. The fish spawn up in the river last in Eufaula, which is the case a lot of places in the country, but some places they spawn in the river first. A lot of places, shallower, flatter water warms up quicker, more color in the water warms up quicker up in the river system. So in the river, they were spawning last. And so that made me nervous. But one thing I figured out really quick, I think, second day of practice, probably, the main river channel ran on the west side of the lake for most of the lake. And so it was deeper, and that deeper water kept it cooler. There was time, like we stayed on the east side of the lake there on the main lake. A couple of those days I'd launch, it'd be 67 degrees. I could go like 1.5 miles straight across the lake to where it was just the river channel was on that side. And it'd be like 61, 62, which is crazy. I'm not a huge person with water temperature, but it was, what that told me was it was just a totally different environment over there on that west side of the lake.
I noticed that. This some more stuff on how you use the shading on your map. Yep. So this is a deal where, to me, this screenshot here is interesting because this is during practice, and this tells me that you understand pattern fishing. Because here's the thing. You can look and see, like, no one gave you this stuff. Someone might have given you a point on it or something. Like, it looks like there might be a rock pile icon that you might have legally gotten there. But what happens is you go here, you get bit right here, and now you start looking for similar things. So you can look on your trail and look at all the same type of shading that you went and looked at to try to figure out, hey, is there a school here? If there's a school here, is there a school here? Is there a school here? Is there a school here? That is some freaking cool stuff.
Yeah, that's I feel like map shading is like the most underrated thing that so many guys that are good offshore fishermen, I'm not going to put myself in the same breath with the great offshore fishermen around the country, but that's one thing that's so big that a lot of guys don't dial in. They don't take the time to do it on your graphs, and it doesn't seem like much, but it can change the way that you look at a body of water just by changing how it's shaded. And I have like all the apps too. I got the Navionics and the C-Map and the Garmin app, and now the Humminbird One Boat Network app. I got all of them. They all can do shading with the paid versions, and I'll constantly change the shading. 5 to 10 foot depth shading, 10 to 15, and I'll switch it up. This maybe I knew Eufaula, a lot of the flats would come into play with the brush piles, so I'd switch it up super shallow, 3 to 7 foot, 7 to 12 foot, or 11 foot, 11 to 15 foot, constantly just making incremental changes to see where a lot of those features really pop to me, where I could just spend this time scanning. Because I went to the Lake Eufaula. I just got my new boat, had 0.7 hours on it, and in 4.5 days,
that's what I had.
I put 34 hours on it scanning. And so
I had 0.7 when I showed up too. I've been in it 8 days, and 7 of them were crappie fishing days on trolling motor.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I didn't get any waypoints or any information that did anything to help me in this tournament. I'm sure, hopefully, I'll get some information that might help. But I kind of figure with the information and stuff, man, I feel like people that are gonna hit me up randomly about it, if they know it, then everyone else is gonna know it and figure it out too. So
yeah, but this is an example of where, I mean, you systematically were trying to put the pattern together at this point on this area.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't see the 3-4 miles past that going up the creek and the however many miles the other direction coming from the main lake before that.
That's a lot of idling, and to me, I can tell just based on kind of how a little squiggly it is that this was all idling. This entire ledge you went up, and this is so it looks like short. That's miles.
Oh yeah. That's probably where you're seeing from the bottom left part of the screen to the back of that creek on the top of the screen. It's probably 3 miles.
Yeah.
And that's probably the third time after 3 to 4 days of practicing that my routes have been deleted because they don't hold space or whatever.
Okay, so that's why you don't keep. So I have all my routes, like it looks like chaos by the time I'm done, but you don't mind deleting routes from practice to the tournament?
No, not necessarily. Not always. Sometimes I will keep something. Usually I just use that for navigation for running through fields, stump fields or whatever.
So you got on that pattern. So you knew pretty quick, like there's such a thing as like, I spent the whole practice searching. You spent the whole practice refining. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I did both. 100%, man. I knew I would get my butt handed to me if I had to go up the river and I still checked it. But if I had to go up the river and throw a swim jig and frog and stuff, I was going to just like beat my head into catch 14 pounds a day. But I knew that, so I wasn't going to do that. And I spent like 30 minutes looking for bedfish and it was pretty wishy-washy. And so after that, I mean, I did check a ton of brush piles. I scanned for brush. I scanned and I fished them. I fished some brush piles hard. Like I spent a couple like half days, like I'm just going to brush pile hop and see how much weight I can catch. And it was just super hit or miss. I'd catch a 5-pounder and right away. And then boom, I'd go 20 brush piles without catching a fish. And I'm like, oh my God. Then
how are you finding these brush piles? Are you side imaging them? I had a couple guys who fished the MPFL last year that were like, hey, here's 3 good brush piles. Here's 4 good brush piles. I'd freaking look at them and then I'd try to expand on it. Did you have some of that mixed in too?
I just knew from watching that Bass Elite Series event that Buddy Gross won. You could see a lot of guys that were talking about on the live. I spent a lot of time watching the 7-hour live footage, scrolling through it to see where they caught them and said, I'm fishing brush piles, whatever. And so I looked at the areas, the flats where they really caught the brush pile fish and saw how they related. And I'd also heard, just from reading around that Eufaula, those fish like to be off the bank there. And a lot of those brush piles are in 4 to 10 feet of water. And so I felt like that was a great fallback plan if the ledge thing went away and those fish all moved up and scattered out, that I've heard that the fish can just go spawn, come right back out to a brush pile 20 yards, 50 yards, 100 yards away, no problem. So that's not a lot of area for a bass to cover. So I felt like I could at least go catch them on a jerkbait and brush piles. That's not something that's difficult for me to kind of figure out. So I wanted to, I spent most of my time scanning the ledges and secondary ledges, and I had a lot of good other stuff, man. I probably had 8 to 10 schools where I felt like I could catch 20 plus pounds out of.
Holy cow.
Yeah, only really 3 places paid off for me because those all went away or they got beat up or people saw me catch fish on them and freaking burn them to the ground.
Did you have any nerves going into day one? I mean, you literally pull up. You've never done this before. You know that you've got people hoping that you suck, people that are hanging on your every cast, people that are indifferent and don't even know who you are. But then you also have it for yourself, man. I mean, you've got a lot invested in this. You got a small kid, a wife, a business. I mean, you're putting it out there and you're like, hey, there's no one here. Watch this. 6 casts, 15 pounds. That was freaking nuts, dude. Like, that doesn't happen on your first open.
No, that was very fortunate. I felt like once I got that good boat number, that really I changed, my mood changed a lot when I saw that I was boat 12 that first day, because I felt like I was really going to get there. I was still nervous about it because I felt like one of those 11 people in front of me could find it, no problem. But yeah, man, I honestly, the most nervous I was, it's kind of embarrassing to say this, because I mean, I prepared so much for this season and this tournament with all my tackle, with my mental strategy, my physical strategy and everything, to get ready. And I knew there was 170 some anglers, whatever. An extremely difficult field. And I knew that there was probably some Elite Series guys that might hop in the tournament. But when they sent out that damn email that showed the roster,
dude, it's like, what the hell?
And I was like, why is Brandon Palaniuk and Greg Hackney and Steve Kennedy and Drew Cook and Brandon Lester, why are they fishing this tournament?
Yeah.
And I was like, and that rattled me kind of for like a little bit. I kind of take a breath and be like, all right, well, I'm not fishing against them points wise, but damn, like I already had all these amazing anglers I saw that since they signed up. I already knew there was going to be some incredible locals in here. This is a lake I've never fished before in a part of the country I've never been to. And all of a sudden I have like, and that's not to take away from the other great Elite Series guys there that I didn't even name, and Bobby Lane and Ish Monroe trying to get back in and all this crap.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God, like that rattled me, because I am a huge fan of the sport. I'm a nerd for the sport. So yeah, seeing those names on there, I was like, okay, here we go.
And it was legit 6 casts, right?
Yep.
I mean, that had to be, you were pretty chill about it. I would have been like a little bit more demonstrative, I think, after I put number 5 in the boat, but you also had plans for 20 pounds. So
more than that, honestly, I made like 2 casts one day on that spot. I caught a 4.5 and a 5.5. I made it. I came back another day because I kept checking fish to see if they were largemouth, because I kept catching hybrids and whites on some of these spots too. So, and there was like I said, like 50 to 100 fish there. So I wasn't worried about like burning one. I was more worried about people seeing me fish it. So I'd only pull in when someone wasn't there. And yeah, I pulled in again. I caught a 5-pounder another time. And so I was like, I'm going to at least catch 22, 23 off this spot. But yeah, I pulled in those first 5, probably weighed like 16, 17. And I upgraded probably 5 more times in that spot before it completely shut down after like an hour. And then I decided I was going to do my backup plan. I was like, well, I caught a bunch of 4s and 3s. I have 18 pounds. I'll just go catch some 5-pounders out of brush piles now. And then I went to catch the 5-pounders, and they didn't exist. They were gone, all of them. And 2 boats rolled in and started fishing that area the rest of the day. I was like, oh, okay. Fun. So I'll just run the rest of my spots, and there was no fish on those either. So I started off with a bang, then I was just kind of like chasing the bite around, and I gained a couple more ounces with some coals, and that was it.
I talked to another angler who lives in Texas. He caught him really good too, and he said I'm catching the way we catch him at Ivy. He said, and it's good. But he didn't tell me what that was. It was before the tournament. And there, I looked at like Jack York. He's a dude who's down there in East Texas, and you and Cannon. I don't know. I just met him. He was super nice to me. I enjoyed talking with him at the meeting, but he's another dude. Like there was a group of you guys that all like top
Shane
10.
Campbell, about 1.
And I don't know anything about Shane Campbell. Is he a Texas dude?
Guy. Yep.
So is that why that group of you guys all figured out that same thing, because you're comfortable with that? You've moved from Nebraska down there, and that's what's kind of going on in that East Texas, South Texas, what's going on. So it just seemed natural. You're going to check that and went, holy crap, it freaking works on Eufaula.
So I think I haven't fished Rayburn a lot, and I haven't had a lot of success at Rayburn. And those guys all have. And it definitely, that's how Rayburn fishes a lot of times. Like you got to cover a ton of water with a deep crankbait to make some react and get a good bag a lot of times. I mean, look at Keith Combs. A lot of people don't know how much of a machine that guy is, just as a crankbait, a deep crankbait fisherman. Just there's no one on the planet like him. KVD in his prime maybe, but that's about it. I'm a little bit different. I do catch them that way a lot of places. And so it was comfortable for me. But honestly, like Eufaula was like a baby Rayburn when it comes to like fishing structure and stuff. It was like 5% as hard to figure out as Rayburn is with that bite. So I definitely saw those guys up there and was not surprised. It sets up and fished a lot like a lot of these East Texas lakes do.
When you say 5%, it just means that the spots stick out like a sore thumb to you on where the fish should be positioned. So it's not, you don't spend a lot of time hunting. You spend a lot of time fishing and catching.
Refining. Yep. Definitely.
Okay. I know you do this a lot. I want to throw the video back up. This is something that I'm intrigued about, which is hook to land ratio within 172 boats, where every ounce counts. Catching what bites is critical. And you were very low key about this, but I also noticed every time you hook one, you step back on the deck after you hook one. Just walk through your system of keeping these fish to the boat, because it's very un-Iconelli-like, I guess I should say. Extremely subdued in the pressure moments.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of pressure for sure. I didn't feel like there was, honestly, when I got to this spot, no one was there. I was like, I'm going to freaking blast them. I know these fish are here, and that's probably why I was so calm. I probably won't be that calm again the rest of the season. And I'm not bragging when I say this, but I catch a ton of 7+ pound fish here in Texas. 10+ pound fish, and I'm used to catching fish I was not nervous about getting those to the boat. And really, I mean, I think what you're kind of touching on was kind of my mechanics of not, jacking them on the hook set and being really soft with them. But that was probably giving them a little bit more onions than I generally would, because that's an 8-foot rod. It's a pretty heavy crankbait rod. It's a pretty
That's an 8-foot. Say that again.
Yeah, it's an 8-foot cranking rod. It's like a medium heavy or heavy moderate fast action rod from 6 Cents. And it's 15-pound line. That's a 6 Cents 500 DD. It's a big, aggressive crankbait, and it's got giant, thick gauge triple grip hooks on it. And so that's more than I would generally give a crankbait fish as far as like leaning on them. That's a 15-pound test, like I said. And that bait dives deep. It's still getting down. Like I said in the video, I was sitting in like 24 to 28 feet of water, casting into like 50 feet from me. It was like 14 to 16 feet deep, and that's where they were set up. So I was bombing at 130, 140 feet, and it was hitting the bottom probably for 50 feet of that cast. And I was just, kind of not super burning it through there, but a 6-speed reel, really kind of moving at a good clip through that group of fish, trying to get them to react. Okay, and that was the only way to catch them that day, and a lot of the days in practice too was a crankbait, man. I feel like I'm versatile, and I fish literally probably 15 baits through a group of fish like that. That was about the only thing they would eat.
So when I watch this, as a guy who cranks a little bit, I mean, it's not my forte. I got no issues cranking, but I'm cranking like 7.6 medium heavy. I would have to fight those fish. You don't, because of your system. You, with a 3-pounder, what you've done is you have created a system where a 3 to 4 pounder on that equipment is equivalent to a 15-incher on my equipment. So instead of me having to fight them a little bit more, you can just crank them in like they're 15-inchers, and then the 6 and 7 pounders are like 3-pounders.
Something like that, yeah. And every fish is a little bit different, but yeah, absolutely. And it's not. And the one thing I knew, the biggest part of this was, if they were going to bite, they were going to get it in this spot. And it's going to be different everywhere we go. I think we're going to have some more crankbait derps coming up here before too long.
Yeah, you're going to drill it. All you guys are going to drill everyone at Toledo Bend again on it. And you're going to also do it on Wilson. No, listen, I've already talked to my buddies, and we're like, okay, they're going to freaking smash them at T-Bend. Wheeler's going to be another, like.
Could be. Yep. Eufaula, maybe.
To me, it's going to come down to the grinder tournaments when it's not working. There's someone on your starting spot, and it's that you fish so many that you know how to put yourself in position to have opportunity to catch 5. That's where I think it's going to come down to. And dude, you're going to catch them good enough on the tournaments where you're, quote, supposed to catch them that I mean, I think it's going to come down to a couple decisions in that. But that's just me, because you've never been in that position with that much pressure on you, right? With a spinning rod and on an unfamiliar fishery doing something that you're not used to? Or am I not giving you enough credit?
I'm not going to be arrogant when I say this, but you're probably not giving me enough credit, dude. I caught a 13-pounder on 8-pound test spinning rod. I catch them on 2.8-inch baits.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you haven't had a bite for 5 hours and there's 250 boats out and you're like, oh my God, I have 45 minutes to catch one more or my season's screwed.
Agreed. That's different for sure. I try not to let that get to me. We'll see how it goes the rest of the year. There's going to be that moment, though. There's going to be many moments like that.
This one cracked me up. It was you on the spinning rod. I think this might actually be a striper, perhaps. I don't know if you're
dicking around there, honestly.
I know that was funny, but it was hilarious when you hooked that thing on the spinning rod. That's how you know you're having a good day, is when you hook one and it's just bulldogging you and you're just like, come on, man, just give up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. They kept rolling through and I was like, screw it, I'm going to catch one. This is too fun not to happen here.
What was that? Was that just a little swim bait?
Yeah, that was my little 2.7 Divine swim bait.
Jeez, that's good stuff.
Man, I'm excited for the second day video to come out.
When does it come out?
Well, probably Friday. I caught them on like 15 different baits. Everything I threw seemed to work that day, at least the first time through a school, and it was just a great time.
I'm trying to pull up. I'm actually showing that. I'm trying to pull up. I've got a photo because I want to show you how different my tournament was from your tournament, and for some reason it's not letting me email it to myself.
That's all right. I need to pour some more whiskey anyway.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Mystic Mountain Distillery Outlaw Legend, which we're coming out with a Milliken version.
Wait a second.
Legend
hold on.
Soon.
Let me get you big screen.
Do I need to hold it closer to the camera? There we go.
Hold it back. There you go. Outlaw Legend.
You got it from Mystic Mountain Distillery through my ventures fishing. Met the owner of the distillery, huge fan of the channel. Shout out Bobby. And stuff's amazing. It's delicious stuff. We're coming out with a Milliken version. I got a bunch of hang tags right. Hold on a second, Matt. Check this out. So I got all these. I got like 250 of them. We're doing a small batch of this. It's an entire whiskey cask of it. And it's got this guy right here. And I'm going to autograph all of them to give out to everyone that purchases one. That has.
And where are they going to be able to purchase? Where are they going to be able to purchase these?
They're going to be able to poach it from the Mystic Mountain Brewery website. I'll send it to you so you can post it up there if you want to. But yeah, I got to do 250 autographs on these tomorrow. So
that's freaking cool,
dude. I'm pumped.
I should have done this before. Hold on a second. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to see if I can do it this way. Oh, that's going to work. It's comical. It is comical on how there we go. We'll see if that goes through. It's comical on how different our tournaments were on Eufaula Bend, because I legitimately found like one small area, a shell, and I talked about it on the show. I'm not going to go back through it, but I did have the I just heard it. It went through. Oh, very nice. Open image in new tab. There it is. There it is. All right, I'll show it. All right, so that was my tournament. And that was two small shell beds adjacent to each other that I found at 9 a.m. on day one of the first morning with a Ned head, while I had zero fish after my original pattern had completely imploded and I had zero fish in the box.
Well, it's like we talked about before you came on here, man. It's incredible to maximize your time like that. Matt, as someone that likes to cover some water, even when I don't need to, that would make me want to maybe drive the boat off the dam there. But yeah, that's some maximizing right there, Matt.
It did. So what you can't see
is disturb right there.
That's exactly what it is. What you can't see is there's red in there. So red is day 1. On day 2, I said I'm never leaving it. So these are a small power idle away from each other, probably 10, 15 seconds. There's a little cut back in here. We'll get into some interesting stuff here because this is what's shocking to me. I came out here at 9 a.m. on day 1, and then I spent 95% of the rest of my tournament on these. This is about 6 foot. The boat was sitting in about 7.5. These are shell beds. I was casting up into this area here, and then and this area down here. Cool, and had no idea what was there. They were shell beds, but I went back and forth just on day 2 14 times between the 2 spots. And I'm not a shell bed expert. And I caught him on a drop shot, a Ned rig, and a shaky head. And then I caught one fish on a 5XD when I came all the way out here. And then I did it a little bit more. You can see I kind of made some more paths. Like the very first time I did it, I was reeling it in. I caught a 4-pounder on a 5XD. And then I did it for like another hour and never caught another one. I caught one on a Spro square bill, like second cast of the morning right up here. The Fat Papa, and then the rest were all just drop shot, shaky headed Ned. But this is the interesting thing, Ben. This is a cut that goes back in here, and then there's a cut that goes back in here too, right? So when you sit somewhere in a 230 boat tournament, you notice things. I am not kidding. I bet you 25 boats, 25 to 30 boats each day went into each of those cuts with either a white swim jig, a chatterbait, or a flipping bait. They set down on top of the shell bed that there was a school of fish on. They got all their stuff ready. They went to the bank. They started fishing the exact same laydown, and they went around each cove exactly the same with the exact same baits, spent the exact same amount of time, and then left. And I never saw a single person catch a fish. And 25 guys different went into each one. Balls out, shut down, exact same pattern, exact same baits. And I'm sure we're wondering why they didn't catch them. I've been that guy. I am that guy a lot of the time. We all are a lot of that guys. And it is amazing how similar we all fish. It's scary. And then it makes sense why you don't catch them a lot of the times when you thought you were going to catch them. You get so conditioned to it. You're doing the same damn thing everyone else is and don't even realize it.
That's an interesting take, Matt. And I think when you start thinking of it that way, you start thinking like, does it matter if you're throwing a hog farmer trailer on your chatterbait or a 6-cent swim bait or a whatever on the back of it or on your swim jig when there's that much conditioning going on? It makes sense, man. I mean, like I said, I feel like I fish some super pressured waters here in Texas. I literally can put a video out and move a population of fish from one video because of where people can see I'm fishing in the background. And I can say, I'm not going to catch them there again, ever. But I know they'll be over here because they're going to get broken up and they're going to move over here. So I've seen this happen at a smaller scale or maybe over a longer course of time. It's interesting for sure how pressure affects these fish.
Wow. Say that again one time. So you're on spot
I
A,
used to do
and
this
you know
in Nebraska.
Okay.
If I would have a tournament coming up at some of these like 400-acre lakes, and I still need to go catch fish for a video because we don't have a lot of fisheries, I could purposely go fish an area that's decent, knowing that in the tournament I wanted to fish 300 yards over there where it can get really good, because I know 72 other boats are going to come in there every single day the next 2 weeks before that tournament or whatever. And those fish are going to just slide up into that stuff because they're all going to get caught or moved. I've seen this happen in Nebraska, Iowa, Texas, Kansas, Missouri. Yep.
You think bass are dumber than we give them credit for or smarter than we do?
It depends how much pressure they've gotten. So they're probably smarter. I probably overthink how smart they are sometimes, honestly, but yeah.
That's crazy that you can move you can move fish.
You can move fish with fishing pressure, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everybody can, but you can, because you have a following you can.
Or a tournament win, or me putting spots up on Lake Eufaula, I can move them pretty quick too.
How much of this is you just not giving a damn about who knows where you are, and how much of it is calculated as far as what you show?
On like the Eufaula videos, you mean, and the Opens videos?
Yeah, just in general on your videos too. I've always been curious on that, because I mean, you're a smart guy and you show stuff, but how much of that is calculated and how much of that is screw you? It's freaking America, and I can show me catching a fish, and if it pisses you off, then get over it. It's calculated around here in places where, I mean, I don't have, like, everyone thinks Texas is this land of abundance. Well, I mean, I think that OHIV phenomenon is resemblant that it's not, where 75% of the guides at Lake Fork, where the bite got tougher and the lake level dropped, moved their entire families and lives to OHIV simply because it was good fishing. Like, these guys will literally move their lives. They don't care. Like, it's crazy. Like, people are going to move because the hot bite, and it's not easy everywhere. So I'm very careful around here. But yeah, dude, I'm excited about this Open series because, you know, me and my camera guy talk about this every single time we go out and film. We can't show drone shots of where we're at. We can't show boat ramps. We can't get these great shots of to start the day to end the day because it gives away where we're at, and it blows fisheries out. And so it's really refreshing to fish these Opens this year and be able to be like, yeah, you can.
This is where I caught them at this lake. And it's a learning situation, which I want to do at every single fishery. But unfortunately, our fishing culture and our the fishing environment these days, people don't care to go learn. They just want to go hop on where they saw you catch them.
I mean, you didn't pluck these suckers off live scope. This was idling, finding hard spots that they were sitting on, making a long cast and cranking it, right? Like, this wasn't, I mean, it was an electronics derby, but it wasn't a straight up scope derby.
Definitely not a straight up scope derby. There were some things I did that I didn't really talk about that were kind of sneaky a little bit. That spot that was tough that I fished there, the main spot that I was able to get on, had one sweet spot, probably 15 by 15 feet on a 40 to 50 foot area diameter where they would be around. And when I saw on live scope, when they would group up on that spot, they were there to feed. There was constantly bait flushing over the top. Threadfin shad school was blasting over the top of it. But when they would stop chasing those, it was almost like I would either catch one and break them up, or they would chase the school of bait off and into the creek channel, and they'd be gone for a second. But when they'd come back and they'd all start to set back up, then I'd slide my boat back up there and fire that crankbait and blast them. But when they weren't set up and I could usually get one or two more, even after they were not wanting to bite, on a crankbait, on a 5-inch swim bait, on a scrounger, on a hair jig, on a dragon bait. But when they would break up and they'd spread out, I'd let my boat drift back with the wind and kind of throw to some areas. I'd line it up on a live scope where there'd be several fish within my crosshairs there, and I'd throw something finesse. I caught a bunch on a flick shake. I caught a bunch on some other.
On a bait caster or a spinning rod?
Bait cast. I throw it on a bait caster a little bit.
Big flick shake.
No, but
you throw a little flick shake on a bait caster.
Yeah, I do some. We do some stuff that's like that, I guess, that I kind of learned from my fishing partner, the Zark. If he's watching, shout out to Joe.
So that's why you got to be a little low key on it because it's someone else's. Yeah. I know that deal. It's not that you don't want to say; it's that you don't want to blow out your buddy stuff because then the phone rings and you're like,
"Of course,
I freaking told you."
Yeah,
don't say anything about
I heard you talking about this. Yeah, and it was that and the swing head dragging around. I threw a bait on a free rig a little bit.
Swing head on those shell beds, I thought for sure. So after day one, I was like, all right. I threw a Carolina rig on it. I cranked it. I threw a swing head. I had the mag Ned, the big 6-inch Ned. I had, what else did I have? I had a football head. I had a big Texas rig. I had a mag shaky head with the big 8-inch worm on it. I was like, I'm going to jack them up tomorrow. No, I caught them all still on the drop shot net and shaky head on the spinning rod that I was like, hey, I'm going to catch them on bait casting stuff. But you kind of went through that rotation too.
Went through a lot of rotations. I haven't caught some on Scrounger that last day.
That's so underrated.
Cool. Yeah, it's a lot of sneaky stuff.
And,
I threw a free rig bait a little bit. It was kind of
Which
sneaky.
one is that? Is that the Japanese one that it's like a little bit like a Carolina rig and a split shot rig mixed together or something?
It's a Texas rig, but it has a weight that can slide and move more freely on the line.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I drew a Japanese dude who kicked my tail on it on one of those Tennessee lakes.
As a finesse guy, you should look at it a little bit, probably, Matt.
All right, I will.
But when they were not on that part, that real juice sweet spot of it, I could kind of drag that stuff around and Carolina rig I threw too a little bit. Didn't do great on that. Caught him in practice on it, but when they would group back up. When I'd finally pan up there, I'd pan away at 120, 140 feet, and they'd group back up on that sweet spot. I'd go slide back up, pick up the 500 DD or the C10 or C15 from 6 cents, blast over there once, boom, get a good one. And then that was it. That was after that morning flurry.
I mean, are those some of the OG 6 cents plugs that came out?
Yeah, man, that's like one of the originals. That 500 and 300 DD, you saw Jack York, he finished I think 6th, one place behind me.
He blasts them on fork all the time.
Yeah,
I've never talked to the guy in his life. He looks like he's ready to be in an Old West shootout, and all he does is catch 10-pounders on Lake Fork. He's got the best facial hair in the world. That's all I know about the guy.
If Jack wasn't a guide, he'd be catching a lot more 10-pounders than he does. He's going to qualify for the elites probably this year. Is
he a good dude to have on BTO?
Yeah, Jack's a great dude, man. He
doesn't seem like a chatty guy, but that could just be because of the facial hair.
Yeah, he's not super talkative guy, but very cool dude, and honestly, like probably the best or one of the best fishermen in the Texas area.
All right, I'll get him on for like a segment then. That way I don't have to push him for content but he intrigues me and he's young too, isn't he?
Very young. He looks like he's 40. He looks like he's somewhere between like 19 and 47. You can't tell. But I think he's like 1 year out of college, man. He's like 24, 25, I think. Maybe 23. Huh. He actually started, he's a giant dude. He's like 6'6", 6'7".
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and he was offensive lineman at University of Minnesota. And he got injured, so he moved down. He switched and stopped playing football and moved down to Stephen F. Austin. Yeah,
interesting. I'm on the show now. You got his contact stuff. Shoot his contact stuff to me afterwards.
Division I offensive lineman and got an injury, and now he's a bass fisherman.
Yeah, he's full-time guide too, right?
Full-time guide, yeah, hell of a fisherman, man. He did great in college too in fishing, and really good dude.
Anyways,
he caught him on 300 DD. That's one of the OG 6 cents baits. We got the entire Cloud 9 series of baits. And the reason I mention that is our 500 DD version has a narrower bill. And Uncle Frank, who I've been talking to on the phone a lot.
Oh, you've been talking to Uncle Frank on the phone?
Absolutely. Me and Frank talk. Yeah. Frank's my man.
Dude, he's freaking awesome.
Yeah, Frank's the man. He's a legend.
All right, continue. Sorry.
Well, anyways, he talks about a lot how baits dive differently. And how some swim down, some have a real aggressive side-to-side motion that dives them down a more sharp angle. Well, the Cloud 9 series, the C15, C10, C20 that I throw, those have the wider lip, and they got the little hook on the bill like the XD series does from Strike King.
Yeah,
and so those dive at a sharper angle, and they go big side-to-side, wider lip. Well, the 300 and 500 DD, Jack was throwing the 300 DD, so I assume he's fishing a little bit shallower ledge or whatever than I was fishing. I haven't talked to him about where he was fishing, but it has a narrower bill, and it's a flat-sided bait with just one little knocker rattle in it. And so even though it's a big bait with big trebles on it and stuff, it kind of swims down more and gets down there. And when it hits something on the bottom, a lot of these baits, you see it on live scope, and it's something we never would have known without live scope. But you watch the bait, a crankbait will be deflecting on the bottom. It'll come across, hit a stump or something. Some of these baits will fly like 5 to 8 feet off the bottom and it's wild. Make this big arc, and at that point, you're not going to catch anything on it, unless you get a dumb one. But you want that bait when it's deflecting to kick off to the side, one direction or the other. And that's one thing I really noticed with that 300 and 500 DD, with the less aggressive, sharper dive action, more of the swim action. They'll roll over when you kind of hit them on the bottom and deflect them, and they don't fire up off the bottom and really get out of that strike zone for 15 to 25 feet of your cast. You can see that on live scope. So that's just one thing I like to throw in. It's a different bait that is extremely effective that a lot of people forget about because they're so into the Cloud 9 series, the 5XD, the 6XD, 8XD, the DT series from Paula. They kind of forget about that aspect of a bait that you can see with live scope.
You mentioned the hooks. You said you were using big hooks on it. Kevin used to use big hooks too, but then there's also a bunch of guys that are like, hey, I want a smaller diameter hook because I want it easier to penetrate and hold. What are your thoughts on hook, treble hook diameter when it comes to long distance deep cranking?
Everything's situational. I was catching a lot of fish, and like I said, they were freaking locking it up. I wasn't losing anything hardly. And so that situation, I want something that's going to hold them on. You're not going to lose many fish when they're getting it. And that's an EWG thicker gauge wire hook. And I was catching a lot of hybrids, and those hybrids were like messing up my 2X EWG hooks because they were like 6 to 8 pound hybrids. Some of them were huge. That was one of the smallest ones I caught there. You showed the spinning rod, but they were just like messing my crankbait up. So I don't want to constantly be changing hooks that much. But the second day they were slapping out a little bit, and I would throw like some lighter medium gauge, I would say, round bends on it. And I picked up a couple fish there that freaking, just barely corner hooked them or something. Mm-hmm. That's just one thing that's, I mess with hooks a lot, especially since I throw big baits a lot. I've really spent a lot of time figuring out hook sizes, refining my hooks and the right hooks that I think, a lot of guys, at the upper level, that's one thing they do and they change that they don't talk about or don't get enough credit for that can make a huge difference in what you bring back to the scales.
I also think it's interesting. I've experienced this before, and I've heard a lot of guys talk about it, and it's something that's not talked about. Predators are predators, and hybrids and big largemouth. Like, I had talked to a couple guys who said that they were catching some hybrids, and I didn't even know there were hybrids in the lake. It was at that exact point of practice that I knew that I was not targeting winning schools of fish by any means, because I just have seen it across when you're talking about guys who are catching big stripers and hybrids and catching bass on it. They're around the bait. They're around the right bait. And when you're not, those predator species aren't there. It was like two different lakes, man. Do you agree with that, or you said
it can be? It's situational, because this lake, it freaked me out a little bit because so there's lakes down here where the hybrids, like Conroe, the hybrids will bully the largemouth schools off of spots. So you can almost, like, a lot of times you can never keep up with a largemouth school offshore at Conroe because the hybrids are constantly pushing them around, and the whites, even because the whites will group up in 7,500 fish schools and just be crawling the bottom, and they're eating everything in sight. I don't think the bass want to compete with that, especially the 4+ pounders. So some lakes, they'll push them off, but other lakes like this, it freaked me out because I found those fish on the school we actually showed there, the Tucker Smith spot, and blasted a couple good ones. Well, I went back, that was day one. I went back on day 3 or 4, and I was like, sweet, they're here. Make one cast to make sure. Boom, 6-pound hybrid. I was like, all right, there was a hybrid there, but I hope they're not all hybrids. Next cast, 8-pound hybrid. Next cast, it's like 6-7 pound hybrid. I was like, great. One of the schools I found is wrecked. It's done. So I'm like, well, it's kind of fun though, because I found other spots. I'll just keep catching them. Fire in there, 5-pound largemouth. I was like, ooh. Boom, done. They will mix in. That's awesome. They're here for a reason. I hope they don't push all the bass out, but they will mix in. I'm out of here. So, like, a lot of people watch the practice videos. They're like, man, you're catching a lot of fish and sticking a lot of fish there for practice. You should have maybe rolled your hooks or something. I thought it was important to make sure that they weren't leaving and that they weren't not bass. They were not hybrids and whites in those areas. So I did pull in some of those even really good schools, and I would stick one a day just to make sure.
Do you go through a bunch of this stuff with subscribers on your channel? I know one of them said that you went through like your setup and all that.
Yeah, definitely. For like my rod reel line setup.
Yeah. Just like a little bit more in-depth stuff. If people
Absolutely.
want more outside of just the BTL stuff, they can subscribe to your channel, but then become like an exclusive member. Is that how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So I talk a little bit more about that in some of these, my regular videos on my channel. I mean, they're like 30 to 40-minute videos, every one I've put out so far for this tournament. So they're really in-depth, and there's a lot of knowledge there. I think if people are really willing to sit down.
Was that like $20 a month, or what is that?
I do $5 a month for the YouTube.
Oh, you do
stuff.
$5 a month?
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is all free stuff. But yeah, I put out some other tips. Like I'm putting out a video in a couple days that is about how to make a chatterbait hunt like crazy, more so than any of the people on the market know about. That's kind of going to be probably something I shouldn't put out for $5 a month. But yeah, if you want to learn how to create a better jackhammer.
And then you just go to your channel and then click join, right?
Yep, you got it.
For $5 a month. I mean, that's pretty fair. That's really fair, actually. I mean, this is what you do
fair at all, but yeah, I agree.
That's what you do for a living, man. I mean, you're putting out content.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is I just ask the BTL listeners to support the brands that support BTL. To me, that's just as valuable as joining or a subscription or Patreon or whatever it is. And they do, because you have sponsors that'll call and be like, dude, it's awesome. Like that. That's what it is. And they do the same with you. 6 cents. So I've told the story before. I met Casey at like the 2012 Classic. I'm almost 100% positive that would have been his first Bassmaster Classic. He had like 7 hand-painted baits, clear things, jerk baits, a couple spoons that were painted, and that was it. And I was a media guy, and he had a little bitty square booth, and he was 6 cents fishing. And he said, oh, you're from Oklahoma. The Classic is going to be at Oklahoma next year. What are some baits I need for next year's Classic? And that was kind of my first introduction to that. Does that sound about right for the timetable, 2012?
Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. It probably was, yeah.
It was literally just him. I remember he was a young dude. He was like my age. And I was like, this is really cool. And I bought a couple jerk baits, and I bought a couple painted spoons. He had like, and I was trying to figure out if they were just like blanks that he was paint. At the time, I'm pretty sure they were just blanks that he was painting.
Yeah, yeah.
That were getting painted.
Him and like another guy were the only ones doing it.
Yeah, it was just him. Like he had, I think, just spent his money. I mean, it was the tiniest little booth ever. I'm sure he doesn't remember this at all, but I vividly do.
Casey would remember that. Yeah.
And then it just exploded. How did you actually get involved with 6 cents? Because there's a bunch of people involved at a bunch of different levels, and it's a massive company now that does a ton of different stuff. But like, when did you become a part of it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's kind of an interesting story. I had my previous job, and I was a project manager, and I traveled a little bit. And so I had messaged Casey. This is probably 2015 or so, maybe 2015 or so. And I said, like, I love your baits. I was fishing tournaments, probably like 25, 30 local to regional tournaments every single year. I said, I love your baits, dude. I'm using them, catching fish on them. Is there any way we could work together, figure something out? He's like, yeah, for sure, man. We can start you off with our pro staff program or whatever. And he was like, it was him he was running the company, and another guy was like shipping the products for him. And that was it. And I was like, cool, this is incredible. Thanks for the opportunity, whatever. And so like a couple days later, I got word that I was coming down. I was going to go down to Houston from Nebraska for a job on my full-time job that I had to be a project manager. So I had him back up. I was like, this is super random, but I think your shop's in Conroe, right? Like I'm actually only like 25, 30 minutes from there. Is there any chance I could come meet you and check it out? He's like, yeah, for sure, man. It's not much to check out, but 100% come on down. I'd love to meet you. So he came, I went down there, and of course, like I'm a tackle maker, a tinker, and make a lot of my own jigs, airbrush and stuff. And so when I went in his office, and it was a majority of what he'd done was airbrushing baits at that point. He's one of the best artists for airbrushing in the world.
Like himself.
Yeah.
Wait, so those baits that I saw at that classic in 12, he had actually probably airbrushed in his basement.
Not probably, 100%. That was him.
I didn't even realize that. I thought he was just having someone else do it.
Again, funny story. He won one of the first college national championships for fishing. He's a phenomenal fisherman too. And one of the what they won was they got to go on a TV show, him and his partner, where they learned how to custom paint baits on like this ESPN segment for this show. And I think it was with like Scott Rook or something. And at the end of the show, they're like, well, here's the airbrushing equipment for you guys if you want it. And his partner was like, dude, I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to do that. Like, that's not my thing. And Casey's like, all right, I'm pretty artistic, so I'll take it. And so Sixth Sense literally was founded from that. Casey took that, loved to paint baits, and started running the company, and started the company out of his dorm room at Stephen F. Austin. And was just making bank off these guys because he had incredible paint schemes. He just was natural at it, apparently. And one of the only ones in the market doing it, selling, really nice custom painted blanks and pre-Apollo Wigglesworth, stuff like that he painted for $40, $50, $100 a piece on eBay, being one of the first to market selling them. And he's like, okay, there's something to this. So the entire premise of the company was to come out with a custom painted style bait at a regular, not super expensive price point. So that was the company. But anyways, so kind of to come back to my story, I went to the office, was blown away because I custom paint, I make jigs and stuff. And he showed me around, and so we just kind of kept talking, and I kept doing tournaments. And then I came to him with the idea of starting this YouTube channel like 7 years ago. I don't know what year that would even be. God, it's crazy now. It's 2023, but
it's 2017.
Yeah, about that time frame. And he's like, dude, I'm all in. Whatever you need from me, I'll support you. And so that grew like to a bigger discount on product. And then that grew to getting paid every month. And that grew to a bigger paycheck. And everything was always on his end. He was always like, you're selling way more product. I'm going to up this. I'm going to up this. Let's become more involved. How can we help you? How can we work together on this? This is incredible. And so it's just been a crazy relationship to now where I'm in an ownership position in the company. And I get questions every single day from people that are trying to get into the industry. Like, how do I do this? How do I get sponsored? How do I do, what camera do I need to buy? And really it's just like, you work your ass off and you put as much time in and work in as you possibly can and make the relationships and the connections you can. And over time, it's going to work out for you if you really work hard and you really want it. I know that's cliche and everyone says that, but literally started from asking for a 10%, 20% discount to becoming an owner of the largest family-owned company that's not owned by a private equity company in the entire industry.
It's good stuff, Ben Milliken.
It's cool.
What else you got?
What do you think about Toledo? You excited?
Yeah, because I think you'll be able to do whatever you want. I think you'll be able to catch them on glides. I think you'll be able to scope them on a jerk bait. I think you'll be able to throw a swim bait. I think there'll be some fish on beds. I think there'll be some post-spawn fish. If the water comes up, you'll be able to flip them. You'll be able to catch them out of grass. There'll still be some fish offshore. I think you'll be able to do whatever you want. It's just going to be dictated based on the wind.
Yeah. I went out.
Is that a fair assessment?
Dude, it was the first day I'd ever been there the other day. It was the last day before cutoff. And it was like they called for a 10 to 15 mile an hour north wind. And it was slick calm for like 5 hours in the morning. And I was like, cool. I'm getting around, I'm driving all over the main lake, whatever. And then I feel the wind pick up and I'm in a cove, like looking for some bed areas and looking for some timber and stuff to scope. And I was like, man, the wind kind of picked up out there. And I roll out to the main lake and there's like 3-footers with some 4-footers mixed in. I was like, okay, I figured this would be happening today. And I kind of wanted to see what the old Camus was made of. And so I ran like 10 miles in that crap. The boat.
You have to run the boat lanes. That's the problem on Toledo Bend. There is no, hey, let's quarter these and then zigzag it across. Like if you've never been to Toledo Bend, you have a boat lane. It's boat lane. and it's whichever direction that boat lane is, you have to go. So sometimes you're just eating them. I mean, eating them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I was eating them, but doing good. I was good with it, but and then I went and fished for several more hours in a creek and checked it out. And by the time I came out, they were like 5-footers. I was going with them, and the lake's big enough. At least they're spread out, but I was able to kind of ski one of them for a long time, or a couple of them, and so it was fine. But you're right, man. The wind is going to be a huge factor, especially seeing a day canceled at Eufaula.
Yep.
Eufaula
Rightfully
was nothing.
So.
Yeah, and I'm happy they did it for sure. I'm glad to see that an organization's erring on the side of caution. But yeah, Toledo's a different monster, and you're definitely right. You're going to be able to see guys fish their strengths a lot more than you did at Eufaula, where it was a lot more tight, a lot of people on top of each other.
All right. Well, I'm not really feeling like a marathon night session, and we covered the Eufaula Open, which is what I wanted to do. Now, here's the question: Are you willing to jump back on in after future opens and break it down, whether it's a first place finish or 101st place finish?
Only if I do really well, Matt. Yeah, I'm not.
Only if you do really well. Hey guys, we're back. Kidding. It's just me because Ben sucked.
Yeah, Ben got 197th. No, I'm down for whatever, dude. You let me know.
I learned a lot about deep cranking. I learned a lot about how you broke it down tonight. I do want to mention a couple things before we get off air. I want to share this screen right here. As most of you know, if you are regular BTL listeners, every first week of May, I do the St. Jude, the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic out of Wabasha, Minnesota, on the river, on the Mississippi River. And Adam Bartuzek and I from the Crappie Chronicles fish it, and we sell t-shirts to raise money. 100% of the proceeds go to St. Jude's. This is this year's t-shirt. It just came out. I have not really talked or shown about it anyway, but they did a great job over at ATS Printing with the bass in it. It says Bass Fishing Saves Lives, BTL St. Jude, $24.95. You can just go to basszone.com and then click on the Shop BTL tab at the top of the page to get your Bass Fishing Saves Lives. 100% of the proceeds go to St. Jude. And the BTL sponsors have also stepped up. We raised I think $4,600 in a meet and greet in Minnesota earlier this year. So really cool on that. We're trying to get to $10,000 this year. That's the goal, is to get to $10,000. They raise like over $750,000 for this one tournament every year. If you ever have a desire to come up and fish that, you need to fish that one, Ben. That is the tournament. That is the tournament of tournaments.
I'm familiar with it. I need to, absolutely. It sounds like a great fishery too.
It's insane.
A great cause.
I caught a 588 smallmouth on a jerkbait that shortlined me on the side of the boat last year, and then we had like 20 pounds and we were in like 15th. It was ridiculous.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's a great event, and Adam's a good dude. I just talked to him the other night. It was good.
Yeah. That is following the Bugs Island Open. So that tournament is the 6th and the 7th. That Bugs Island
blast, right?
Actually gets over with on a Friday. So I've got a flight scheduled for that Thursday night, which I hope I have to cancel or move to Friday night, because that would mean I make the final day, and then I either miss the banquet or I literally fly in Saturday morning to fish it for 2 days. Then I fly back to Bugs Island. Then I jump in the boat with Marty Stone for a couple days after that. And then I go straight to Wheeler. So that'll be an interesting stretch there, the end of April through the middle of May.
Yeah, that'll give you a headache. What are you with Marty Stone?
Marty has the MJS Academy, where you basically come and get in the boat and he's like brutally honest about how you suck and what you can do to get better. So he was like, hey man, I want to run you through the gauntlet. And I was like, okay, well, I'll be there. And he's got a house on Bugs, and it's after the Open. So I don't know exactly where, if we're going to go to Smith Mountain or the Chickahominy or just jump back on Bugs, but he's going to run me through his course and let me know how I can get better.
That's interesting.
And I mean, I've known Marty forever, so
yeah, that's kind of cool.
It'll be fun. So, all right, man. I'm intrigued about the whiskey. Show that whiskey. Show that whiskey bottle again.
Absolutely. This guy right here, man. Outlaw Legend.
Outlaw Legend. And there's going to be a specific batch of Milliken Outlaw Legend whiskey.
1 barrel of it. We got it picked out and everything.
1 barrel. So that's what, 250 bottles?
250 bottles, yep.
And where is it going to be available?
Mystic Mountain Distillery on their website.
Hold on. Let me pull this up.
Pull it up. It's a real thing, I swear, Matt.
Oh, I am. I just can't spell mountain. Mystic Mountain Distillery.
Yeah, they're out of Colorado.
Colorado.com. Distilleries.
Is that what it is?
Oh, wait, no. Visit website. That was the Colorado. Yes, I am 21 years old. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, you got to be 21 to buy it. Sorry, guys.
Is that it?
That's it. That's the website. Yep.
Dude, there it is right there.
There it is. Boom. Outlaw Legend. We got a special batch specifically for this whiskey that's been aged, I think, 5 to 8 years.
Is it on there yet?
No, it's not on there yet.
I know, but I'm just saying, is there like a pre-order or anything on there yet?
No pre-order.
So at some point in time, this will be out and it'll say like, what will it say? It'll say like Millikens.
Absolutely. It'll be the Milliken edition of it.
Do you know how much it's going to be? Did you say that before?
I don't know that. I think it's going to be like $50 a bottle. It's not going to be super expensive or anything like that. But the stuff's really, really good. I'm a whiskey guy, and
that's going to be gone in like a minute, isn't it?
I sure hope so.
It's going to be like trying to get a freaking Chad.
Yeah, it's going to be similar to that. I'll tell you right now, though, for those of you guys that like Fireball or something, they got a cinnamon whiskey. Actually, the first day I went to Ivy and discovered that place, it was negative 700 degrees, and whenever we would hook one, we'd do some shots while we were fighting the fish because we had them on a spinning rod, so they'd fight forever. And so that stuff will definitely warm me up. It's a really good version of like a Fireball. It's a cinnamon whiskey they got. It's delicious stuff.
Dang it! I didn't realize I went live on top of Hellabass tonight.
Oh, it's okay.
I made sure I called Trav. Well, he posted then to make me feel bad. He said, "Panger over here just running me over every Wednesday night." I called Travis. I was like, "When are you doing?" I told you too. I called Bailey from Sirius Angler. I called Travis. I was like, because I was looking because I couldn't.
Dude, this is 2023. You're gonna have to create a new day of the week if you want to get away from.
I know. I try to do the morning at 8:30 and then the evening. Like I said, this will be available on podcast. You freaking brought the heat tonight, dude. It was entertaining, educational, and engaging, which are the 3 E's, the pillars of BTL. And you delivered on all 3. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on, man. And 193rd or first place finish on the Opens. I'm down to do it.
You learn more about that. Like there's more every time Bradley and I did a breakdown last year. There was way more content. It was like a 2-hour show when one of us just tanked.
Yeah.
But hopefully we won't have that. Let's just have hour and a half shows. Let's just have top. I'm fine with letting you have the top 5s. I'll take the 46 place finishes and we'll both ride it to the Elite Series.
Deal. Sounds easy enough.
1 down, 8 to go. Ben Milliken, thank you for joining on BTL. This has been BTL at night. Tomorrow, day 4, number 107 with the man Frank Scalish, 8:30 a.m. We will talk to everybody then. See ya.